Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise." That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Welcome to the Plus Sides Podcast.
The mood. This is like slow jams. Podcast. Love songs.
That's right.
In the nighttime.
The Sides Podcast. This is us. If you're new here, what are you doing? What are you new for? We've been here a minute. We're in season 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, this might be season 4. We got a lot
It's
of
all right. You can still come in and sit a spell. It's all right.
Yeah, that's right. Come on in and sit a spell. Do you dig? I like it. That's what we're doing. Well, tonight, let's go through and just do our hosts. Everybody knows what we're doing. And because, I'm trying to change out hosts so people can have, from the community, can have like more opportunities to come in and be a part of this movement. So if you are new here, my name is Kim. And this is Plus Size Podcast. And we are trying to get loud and change things. We are trying to shed light on something really, really a marginalized community, or people who deal with obesity for various reasons, whether that be insulin resistance, PCOS, thyroid conditions, genetics, whatever it may be, or different kinds of diseases and disorders. And we talk a lot about how GLP-1 medications treat these different diseases and disorders. And it's because we want you to be able to advocate for your health, and we want you to not feel alone. It's a big deal. And we want you to help us change things. So I start with obesity. I have had it since I was 8. And I started this podcast a little over a year ago with Kat and Jernine, who's not with us tonight. And we have won an award since then. And we're in the top 2.5% of podcast on Apple Podcast. And we're in the top 100 regularly for medical podcasts on Apple Podcast. And so it's great because we're really trying to make a difference, and it is working. And if you are listening and you are engaging with this content in any way, you are now part of this movement. You do not have to be a creator and a GLP-1 evangelist like us to be a part of it. So that's a little bit about me. Kat, who are you? What you doing? How's it going?
I'm Kat Carter. We have been doing this for a little while, haven't we?
Yeah.
It feels like it's a reunion because you've been on vacation. So
yeah.
I have used Mounjaro for about a year and a half. And now can I say it on this platform? I think I can. I
say everything here. It's my platform.
I do compound now because when it was approved, FDA approved for weight loss, then my insurance was like, gotcha, B. Ha ha ha. You don't qualify for this anymore. Yeah. So I do compound. Okay. Thanks, Fridays.
Hey, listen, as long as you're getting your medicine, sick people need medicine, period.
Yep.
So, what about you, Brina? What you doing? Who are you?
I'm Sabrina Ramos. I am on Mounjaro, 15 milligrams for a year now, and I am a type 2 diabetic and am thriving on this medication. I am down 76 pounds.
That's yes. Hallelujah. GLP-1 evangelist in the house. You can't see this, but I'm doing jazz hands. You're listening on the biggest platform we have. Jazz hands are happening. Okay, so enough of that nonsense. So now we're going to invite on our community guest. Our community guest will share their story about really their experience with any of those things that I just mentioned. And then we also have a medical guest on that will help validate those experiences with facts, science, and data so we can hashtag end the stigma, change the narrative, and squash all of this straight trash lies out there with what is actually true and real. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Without further ado, Jay, welcome to the Plus Size Podcast.
Hi, Jay.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing? Oh, you're frozen a little bit.
I am doing very well.
Oh, there you are. We got you back. We froze for a minute. Okay, good. Good.
You look great.
Yeah, you look great.
Like
you look
rosy. You're glowing, Jay. Are you pregnant?
Oh my God, I love a good glow. Oh my God. I'm not pregnant, but I am on Mounjaro. It's my Mounjaro glow.
It's your Mounjaro. Or are you wearing the Pharmacy Honey Halo glow? Which one? That's what I'm wearing. That's what I'm wearing.
Definitely the Mounjaro.
Jay and I are big TikTok shop fans, so it helps fund the podcast, friends. We liked it.
Oh yeah, that Go Pure stuff is so fabulous for my.
I know.
It's making my face like this now. So
yes, we need Go Pure to be a sponsor. Hallelujah, Go Pure.
Yes.
Anyway, great. So Jay, we're so glad to have you here. I'm so glad you could come. I will. Kat and I are interrupters. I'm not gonna lie. So what we do is we go on mute and we allow you to take the floor and tell your story unfiltered, uncut. Because a lot of times in the beginning, when I started this, I was really, really tired of having, I'm sorry, but GMA and the news and all take our TikToks and hide our bellies and, all these different things and just really trivialize the experience that we're having, this life-changing experience, life-saving experience. And so I want to make sure that when people come on the show, they have the floor to do that. So I'm going to shut up now and allow you to please take the space. Okay.
I go on mute now.
Yes, mute.
Well, thank you so much. Once again, I'm Jay, and I have to be honest. I have to do this my way, and my way means to start with a number. That number is 6,615 and 50. That's the cost for me to stay alive and healthy every month. $6,615.50. And it's because I collect stigmas and chronic illnesses like trading cards, basically. And it all really starts with my very first chronic illness. I guess the one I'd like to think of as my frenemy, and that's obesity. And you're like, why is obesity your friend? Obesity is nobody's friend. Look, if someone is there for you consistently since birth and you can count on them always being there, that's a friend. But man, is obesity a bee. Obesity is a bee. The inflammation, the fear, the compounding illnesses that come with it, it's rough. But for me, it actually started at birth. Yeah, birth. I was actually a month late and almost 9 pounds. I was a big baby and a late baby, but I was definitely a big baby. And my parents and my family members love to tell stories about me being a toddler and just how much I would eat from being a toddler. So I would basically have breakfast at at home, and then my parents would take me to my grandmother, who was 5 minutes down the road. I would spend the day with her, but as soon as I got to her house, 30 minutes after breakfast, I would have a second breakfast. like I was some kind of a hobbit or something. But that's definitely not normal for kids to be able to put away 2 breakfasts and not feel physically ill, just putting it away, not having those hunger cues to say stop. So that was my life from as early as I've been told, you know, don't always remember the details, but um, and so I was just a voracious eater, overindulging for as long as I can remember. But obesity really hit me as something that's made me stand out and made me different when I was about 8 years old. Um, every child that's dealt with obesity, every little boy at least, can tell you this time when they realized that they had to move up to husky sizes. Yeah, husky sizes, that lovely story where, I was in the dressing room with my parents, and they were getting very upset with me because the clothes just weren't fitting, and they let me know that my body was unacceptable, that I was too large, that I was not good enough, and, kids are mean and they say things, but duck off the back of a water off the back of a duck, right? It just rolls off of you. But when someone you care about says it, it changes things. That was really the first time I was made to actually feel shame about my body. And I gotta be honest with you, I've never recovered from that. From that moment on, there's never been a moment where I'm like, I'm comfortable in this body. There's never been a moment where I'm like, I'm okay with my body. Because in that moment, I was told something was wrong, and I believe that to this day. But, that was 8 years old, and then the next fun thing with obesity for me definitely was 4th grade. So, I don't know if I made this clear or not, but I'm from rural Mississippi, small town, and in the '80s and '90s, there were some rough things that they did in schools, and one of the roughest was they measured your height and weight in front of the entire class every year. If you're in a larger body and being measured in front of the class, that's something you don't forget. Um, I remember in 4th grade, I got on the scale. They had the little pad. My height wasn't anything special, but that weight number, I was 90 pounds. And that was about 20 to 25 pounds heavier than almost everybody in the class. My only saving grace was I was not the heaviest person in class. And that's a really kind of messed up thing to be happy about, is to not be the fattest kid. But I was like the 3rd fattest kid. And I was like, okay, I did it. But then I was like, this was really embarrassing to have to hear that number out loud because I didn't feel different, but it was just a reminder, yeah, you're bigger and you're definitely different. And, feeling different was just constant for me for multiple reasons. But ultimately, I became a teenager in the age of the dawn of internet. And me and my friend Obesity, we came along for the ride. And what we discovered on the internet were some unhealthy ways to lose weight. Yeah. Um, some ways that just cannot be discouraged enough. Things like severe calorie restrictions, things that involve binging and purging and just all the terrible things, right? And I know that's probably not just my story, but it's something different when you start dibbling and dabbling in that. And I dibbled and dabbled on and off for about 20 years from when I started because every once in a while, it almost feels like a good idea, like the only way out every once in a while. But that was a discovery that I wish I had never made. But thanks, internet, I guess. I don't know. It's terrible. Um, but ultimately, for me, when it comes to obesity and that side effect of all that weight that comes with it, I am the type of person that makes commitments kind of every other year, to lose the weight. And I started as a teenager. And Success varies, obviously. 20 pounds one year, 30 pounds another, 70 pounds if I'm having a really bang up year. But ultimately, I never escaped the obesity. I never was in a smaller body. You know, I was always in a larger body, no matter how much I lost. Um, and ultimately, I would give up on those commitments to get healthier because my body, stalled out, or I suddenly felt demotivated and worthless and just really sad. And so nothing mattered. Or, sometimes I got really hyper focused on something else and just put the fight with obesity on the back burner. That's just the way it goes. Every other year, it was like a rhythm, basically. But, it kept going, starting in my teenage years. And ultimately, one of those commitments to my health came when I was 27, when I found a new primary care provider. And, I love primary care providers because in this story that I'm telling, they're going to show up multiple times, and every time there's going to be a brand new discovery. And this time with my primary care provider when I was 27, I met my second chronic illness. Now, with this one, I think we're going to call this one the scary, very special episode illness. And there's a reason for that. Because if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, you're kind of familiar with this one. Or if you lived through the 80s and 90s, you're familiar with the very special episode. So I was 27, brand new PCP. I said, I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to beat obesity. I'm going to get healthy. I said, you know what, doc? Give me the works. I'll take them. So we ran all the tests, got all the blood work done. And surprisingly, I was obese for 27 years at that point, but everything looked really good still by the numbers, except one thing. They found something. Um, the doctor said, your blood work looks really good, but I've got to tell you, you have you have HIV. And that was a surprise. Um, you know, it was basically everything I knew from the 80s and 90s was, oh, this is not good. This is a death sentence. But it wasn't. It was just the introduction of another chronic illness. I started seeing my infectious disease specialist right away. Um, but I found out it was bad. It was really bad. Let's just say that if I had not seen my PCP, the obesity wouldn't have been the first thing to take me out. I probably had 2, 3 years max if I hadn't started treatment right away. So I started treatment right away. And if you had asked me at the time how I was handling everything, I would have been like, oh, I'm handling this great. I'm getting treatment. I've learned so much. I know this is chronic. I can beat this. I'm doing fine. I went to the ER 2 times in the first 2 months because I had strike symptoms. And that was a surprise. So I spent 6 months seeing a neurologist, and just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, what else is added to the plate? You're fat with HIV, and what's wrong with your brain at this point? Let's find out. Well, turns out that there was nothing wrong with my brain. I thought I was handling everything well. I wasn't. What really happened, I had 2 really insane panic attacks that mimicked stroke symptoms. And that was a first and a last, luckily for me, but it was wild to know that my brain could function so, shall we say, poorly? I guess that's the way I'll describe it. But ultimately, after 16 months of treatment, I became undetectable viral load. I gained that. And that just basically means that the amount of HIV in my system isn't replicating, and I'm unable to transmit it to other people as well. And I've been undetectable for over a decade, but it kind of looms. This chronic illness, just it's always there. But it was under control. And so I had my friend of me, obesity here, and my illness, HIV. And I was like, I think I'm set with illnesses. I think I'm good. Yeah. Then came the lingering illness, my chronic illness number 3. I was on the cusp of turning 30 and a 6-year relationship ended. Woohoo! Um, I couldn't handle the sadness. I have to be honest with you. And I was like, I'm not going to survive on my own. So I sought help, you know? At that point, I was like, I can't focus on anything. I can't focus on my health in any form. Luckily, I kept taking my medicine for um, my HIV, so I was taking care of myself in that way. But my obesity, it was going unchecked. You know, if it said to binge, you binge. You know, if you it said keep eating, you keep eating. You listen, you give into the food noise, whatever it takes, because nothing mattered, right, at that point. But I sought some help, and I was diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder. So I got put on some more meds. So we're just ringing up the meds, you know. They kept the sadness at bay for a time, you know, but there were times where things got weird. I I would become super decisive. I would become super productive, then just kind of crash back into sadness. Um, and one time that sadness stuck. It stuck for 6 months. Can you imagine being sad for 6 months? It, it's not a place to be in. I got so bad that I was barely showing up to work, and when I would call in maybe every few days, I don't know. I can't keep track of what it was, but I know it was bad enough where work called the police for a wellness check. And I remember this very vividly because that same day, I decided the sadness was too much. Um, that day, I had grabbed over-the-counter sleeping aids, and I took a bunch of them. Took a bunch of them. And then there was a knock on my door. And I was like, what? And so I went to the door, and there was a police officer there saying, hey, your work called. They want to make sure that you're okay. I looked at this officer, thought about the fact that I needed help very badly. But all I could see in that moment was this officer with his hand on his gun the entire time. And I didn't feel safe to tell him that I needed help. I felt scared. So I said, no, things are fine. Things are good. They weren't. But in that moment, that's half a second, that fear let me know, okay, maybe I want to stick around for a little bit longer. So it's 2018, and I leave behind all my belongings, and I hightail it to go live with a friend for 6 months for my own safety, you know, and to get some care. And, you know, I finally started to get some help, some more help. And after 4 years of treatment at this point for mental illness, I get a different diagnosis. It's closer to what's going on and what it should have been, but it's still not quite right. And then I finally see someone else to treat this illness, and I get the right diagnosis. So 5 years in, I finally get the right diagnosis. I finally get the right meds. But the thing about medicine, any medicine, is that it may not be a magic pill. It takes time, right, to see it work. So it took about another couple of years before I realized that I'm feeling good. I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling happy. I'm ready to move on with my life. So me with my diagnosis of bipolar type 1 disorder, me with my HIV diagnosis, me with my chronic obesity, packed up, ready to go for it with life. But I was like, oh no, this obesity is going to kill me if I don't do something. And so I was like, I've gotten 2 illnesses under control. It's time to get the third one under control. it's time to finally do something about this obesity. So by this point, you know, it's been 11 years since I saw a primary care provider, which is a real long time, right? And that's when I said, okay, it's time to get some more help. So I found a new PCP. And that's why I met illness number 4. And the fourth one, this is kind of twisted, but it's my lucky illness. You're like, lucky illness? That's a thing? Yeah, it's a thing. Trust me. So it's lucky because when I went to make this health commitment and to see this brand new PCP, I asked for the works. I said, give me everything. And they gave me everything. But unlike last time, everything did not come up clean in the blood work. They were like, your A1C is 6.7. Oh, you're type 2 diabetic. Oh, cool. So another chronic illness to the list. But the next thing that they said to me was, has anyone ever talked to you about weight loss surgery? No, nobody's ever talked to me about weight loss surgery. Has anyone talked to you about weight loss medication? No, nobody's talked to me about weight loss medication. They were like, have you heard of Wegovy? I was like, Wegovy? Nope. They were like, okay, go home, look it up, do some research, and then come back to me. I was like, okay, fine. And so I went home immediately, and instead of Googling Wegovy, I did something very weird. I can't understand it. Maybe it was the ancestors speaking to me. Maybe it was my millennial luck. I don't know what it was, but I went to my insurance company's website first, and I typed in Wegovy. And they said, haha, this isn't covered. Absolutely not. So I was like, okay, I'm not giving up. Now that I know there are obesity medications, Google, what is similar to Wegovy? Do you know the first thing came up was not Ozempic, but it was Mounjaro? I was like, Mounjaro. I was like, okay, what is this? And then I looked at the data and it's like, oh, better results for weight loss. Okay, I'm sold. That's all I needed to know. Ignoring the fact that it was a treatment for type 2 diabetes, which was perfect, I was like, okay. And I contacted the doctor and the provider, and I said, hey, my insurance doesn't cover Wegovy, but would Mounjaro work? And they said, I think that would be a really great fit for you. And they were right. It was a really great fit for me. So I started my Mounjaro journey, and I injected the first night I got it. 2 days later, I discovered my lovely, amazing, wonderful, gorgeous TikTok community after I started, because I was like, I bet you people are talking about this online. And then within that community, I discovered people providing tips and tricks and compassion and information and relatability, because they had struggled with obesity. They had struggled with diabetes. They understood me in ways that other people couldn't. And it's been amazing. I've been on this journey for about 13 and a half months at this point, and I'm down 118 pounds. My A1C is, at 5.3. I'm winning, and it feels good. And it's like, holy crap, am I going to have to end the relationship with my frenemy soon? Is that what's about to happen? Because it feels like that's a possibility. For the first time in my life, obesity may not be the companion that it's always visible, may not be the one that's always there to remind me that I'm not good enough, that I don't fit in. So there are things I'm looking forward to. I have to be honest. I'm looking forward to the day when I can be like, I'm clinically overweight. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that day when I can be like, you know what? I'm clinically normal. I'm looking forward to that day. But you know what? I'm not in a rush. Y'all, I'm a survivor. I've survived, obesity this long. I've survived HIV. I've survived bipolar disorder. Like, I'm surviving, and I can be patient, and I can outlast obesity as well. So I'm just gonna remain hopeful and steadfast because I'm resilient, I got this, and I'm excited because for finally, I'll, I am confident that with this class of medication that I'm going to be able to say, I'm normal, I'm healthy, and no matter what my other chronic illnesses are, they're going to be in check, and my obesity is going to be in check, and I'm going to be normal, and I'm going to be healthy, and I can just finally focus on the future, and I can be me, and that just has me wildly excited and hopeful. So yeah, that's where I am today.
That's awesome, Jay. I think God has big things planned for you. You know?
Mm-hmm.
No, not to get like religious. I'm just saying, like,
No,
you know,
no,
whatever the higher power is, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just
I appreciate
think you've
that.
got big things planned for you. Like, I think when you are a survivor in general, like, that's just, you know, just personal. Like, I just think that when you've been through as much as you've been talking about, like, there's a certain amount of grit, right, that comes with that. And it's just setting you up for bigger things, you know. And I think you help a lot of people in our community sharing your story and sharing your perspective. And you're helping them today because you're reaching a whole new audience, a whole new audience.
Helping people is what I want to do, whatever that looks like, you know? And there's so many people that have felt so alone for so long.
Yeah.
And there's so much confusion and darkness. And if I can help clear that just a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm so okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming in and sharing. We would love for you to stay with us as we invite on Dr. Chang to talk a little bit more. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Welcome to the show, Dr. Chang. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. We've had a little, we appreciate your patience because we've had some technical difficulties, but thank you so much for hanging with us. So there are people that don't know you because we are, at least us here, we're primarily on TikTok, and I don't think that's your platform of choice. But we would love to know a little bit about you and how you help people.
Sure. My name is Beverly Tchang. I am an endocrinologist and obesity medicine doctor and Roe advisor. You're correct that I am not on TikTok, so I may be dating myself. I originated with Facebook, and I'm more active on X right now, so that's where people can find me.
It's awesome. It's so interesting. Like, I hear when we're on TikTok, there's like this whole world of like people that are on Twitter. Like, I still can't even call it X. Like, but there are, and I can't help it. Like, are there people on there creating stuff about obesity like there are with us? Like, are there creators? I'm so curious.
I think the majority of people driving the conversation are those on TikTok. 100%. My little community on Twitter, I do know it as Twitter myself, is very much kind of that scientific community. So that's where we originated, and that's where we're resistant to change and still hanging out.
Well, you know,
resistant to change.
I can understand.
I think I might have seen you on. It was a WebMD.
Yes.
On TikTok. So you're technically somewhat kind of sort of adjacent on TikTok.
Yes, I did a piece for them on menopause, actually.
Okay. Yours.
All right. Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah.
So I read that you're triple board certified in endocrinology, obesity medicine, and internal medicine. So can we nerd out a little bit and talk about how all of these things are interconnected and work together or against us or against each other in our bodies with obesity specifically?
Absolutely. Endocrinology is really the field of hormones. So you're talking about thyroid hormone, estrogen, insulin, all of that. And obesity is such an intrinsic part of endocrinology because it's also all about hormones. I don't know how many times you've gone into your clinic and saw your doctor, and maybe you've said, I'm, eating healthy, I'm exercising, I'm doing all of the quote unquote right things, but it's not working and there must be something wrong with my hormones. And I think in the past, a lot of people were faced with weight stigma and weight bias, and doctors would just say, no, you're just not eating right or not exercising enough. But now we really know the science so much better, and it is 100% your hormones. Obesity absolutely is driven by like those appetite cues, not knowing when you feel full, or wanting to eat something even when you're not really hungry. All of that is driven by different hormones and peptides, proteins in your body and in your brain. And that's really where this intersection of obesity, endocrinology, and medicine come in.
Awesome. I think we can all relate.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Definitely can relate, especially when you say like your doctors, are you not working out hard enough or eating, restricting enough? But it's very reassuring to hear you say someone in your field say that. So I appreciate it.
Let's chat about insulin resistance and why it's so difficult to diagnose and treat right now. What causes it, and how can GLP-1 therapies alleviate it? Additionally, with insulin resistance, how close is it to a diabetes diagnosis? And is the A1C used to diagnose too late, and what damage is caused?
Insulin resistance is one of those topics where you can get into a really deep, dark hole if you Google about it. It's definitely a diagnosis that can be made by laboratory work or by a clinical assessment. So based on maybe family history, how you're eating, how your body responds to certain foods, how you carry your weight, all of that can be used to actually pick up some insulin resistance. It's really hard to diagnose actually, because we do different blood tests and they have to be timed. It's based on like right before you eat, and then an hour after you eat, and then 2 hours after you eat, and it depends on what you eat. And so a lot of people come into this question of insulin resistance based on everything else in the picture. So if you tend to carry weight more around your middle, then you probably have some degree of insulin resistance. If you actually tend towards a lot of carbohydrates and that's what you feel like your body needs as fuel, you may also have some degree of insulin resistance. And of course, if you have a family history of diabetes or the precursor to that, prediabetes, 100% you have the genetics of developing insulin resistance, because that too is that pre-stage of diabetes. And unfortunately, it can go hand in hand with so many things like obesity, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, for example, is another condition that afflicts a lot of women who have irregular periods. So it can be pretty common.
Can I piggyback off that question a little bit? How do GLP-1 medications treat insulin resistance?
So it's kind of two ways. Number one, the GLP-1 itself causes weight loss. And we know that excess weight and that obesity and insulin resistance have this snowball effect. So then when you start treating insulin resistance, people can lose weight, and then vice versa. When you're losing weight, less fat tissue means that you have less insulin resistance too. So there's that, number one. And then number two, the GLP-1s help make that insulin more efficient. So the way I try to describe insulin resistance is if you were the CEO of a company and you had a bunch of employees, they were all named insulin, okay? And you just keep getting bigger and bigger. Your company keeps growing and growing, but your employees actually don't become as productive. In fact, they are less efficient. They get a little bit lazier, and you think that your bottom line is failing because maybe you're not growing big enough. So you hire more and more people. And then it just becomes this kind of bloated company with inefficient workers. And that's insulin resistance. So when GLP-1 comes in, it cleans everything up so that your workers become more efficient and productive at what they do. You need less of it. And so that insulin resistance decreases. That's how that works.
Fascinating. I've heard a lot of people. So we interview a lot of obesity specialists, endocrinologists, bariatric surgeons on the show. And one of our doctors said something that I thought was really profound. She said that I think it's either estimated or a study had said that only about 7% of people with obesity don't have insulin resistance. That if you've had it for a long time, and that we've heard this from several doctors actually, that if you've had obesity for a long time, you likely are insulin resistant. But many, many people that come into our lives and come on TikTok will say, my doctor tested me, and they're talking about their A1C. And they'll say, I'm not insulin resistant because my A1C is okay. So can you explain a little bit about why that might be a myth?
Yeah, definitely the A1C is a lab number that can tell you 100% if you do have it, insulin resistance. So if the A1C is abnormal, if it's too high, then you have insulin resistance. If it's normal, that doesn't mean that you don't. It may mean that what it could mean is that A1C just missed it, and it's not a sensitive or accurate enough test to pick up that insulin resistance. So sometimes we'll do a fasting blood sugar level instead, and we'll actually measure the insulin level in your blood, and that can give us an idea of that insulin resistance. And then even if that's normal, that still doesn't completely rule out the chance that you have insulin resistance, because that's when you're not eating. You could have insulin resistance when you are eating something, but not when you're not eating something. And it could even depend on what you're eating. If you're just eating a plain salad with cucumbers, we may not capture that insulin resistance. But if we challenge your body with an ice cream or something higher sugar, then that may be when that insulin resistance manifests. So that's why I think people can get different stories when they talk to different people.
When it comes to
go ahead, Jay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious. When it comes to insulin resistance, a lot of people don't know when to start advocating for themselves and just asking the questions of their medical providers. Hey, do I have insulin resistance? When should people start asking and advocating for themselves to question if they do have insulin resistance?
Anytime, every time, anytime.
Anytime, every time. Hallelujah.
Yeah. I think if you'll know that you have the right doctor, the right provider, the right fit, when they are willing to answer those questions, or they are willing to say they don't know, or that they can direct you to someone who does know. I think that's a really important component of having that therapeutic relationship. And if you're not getting that from your provider right now, then you need to keep on dating and find someone else.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so true. I think that one of the reasons that a lot of us end up with type 2 diabetes is because we don't know to ask, right? Or we think that
you don't know what
doctors, or that we think the doctors know everything, right? And the truth is, especially if it's like a general doctor, how can we expect them to know everything? Like obesity there's a reason we have obesity specialists and endocrinologists, and we have these specialists, right? There's a reason, and it's because it's very complex, So I wish there were more, I really do. Because I feel like my life would look very different if I had known about this and advocated early, I think, Jay, everybody on here, when they've shared their story, has alluded to the fact that where would I be now if I knew sooner, right? Where would I be now if I could have, actually taken these medications when they were available, sooner if I had known about them, because they've been around a long time, they really have. Sorry, Kat, go ahead.
You sound like Oprah in many of her specials. Where have y'all been? Remember 20 years ago? So I would say, before I ask my question, I think that we all should find endocrinologists if we can. I think what we've learned doing this work is that it's very important. It's very important. Add, don't subtract to your medical care team, right? But so, Dr. Tchang, did you hear about the Blue Cross Blue Shield sort of? Okay, so we're familiar. Okay, so recently Blue Cross Blue Shield dropped a bomb on the GLP-1 community. So they're making, in short, some of the things that they're making us do is making patients reapply for their prior authorizations, employ a weight reduction agency approved by Blue Cross Blue Shield, among many other things. And the thing that stands out in my mind is that we've learned from all the medical professionals that we speak with is that this therapy isn't temporary, and that maintenance dosing is encouraged. And I feel like this insurance process is looking for an endpoint to stop taking the therapy, whereas our medical field is telling us that it's therapeutic. We're looking at maintenance dosing. So what are your thoughts on the eternal battle with insurance? And do you think that maybe, Pollyanna here, will they get it one day? Maybe.
Oh my gosh, the insurance battle is so frustrating, and I feel that only as a doctor. I don't even feel it as a patient, so I cannot imagine how much more annoying and depressing it is when you are paying into this service that is supposed to help you stay healthy and prevent illness. But I think the hard line here is that they serve a different bottom line. They serve a financial bottom line. And while you and I and all of us here are on the same page that we should be pursuing and investing in the strategies that will keep us healthy and prevent us from getting sick, the insurance companies are looking at the cost of that and thinking, you know, it's cheaper to just let the patient get sick and not treat him. And that's painful. So I really think that the healthcare system in the US especially is desperate for any kind of disruption to this. I think we really need to stop letting the insurance companies take hold of our health.
Yeah, so it's almost diabolical sometimes. I think, you know,
it's disgusting.
People need medicine.
Disgusting.
It is. I feel like
not just medicine, but
surgery. I just want to be like, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's like,
if they aren't providing medicine, what are they doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Like what are you even doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
What is their purpose? I agree. I think, you know, and I think that's why a lot of people do try to work outside of the system because they see it so broken. They they create practices where they don't take insurance because they know that whatever they submit to insurance is not going to be covered anyway. Or we look for compounding pharmacies because the medication that you know you need is not going to be covered and you need to just work out of the system.
Right.
So I completely understand the need to find workarounds because what we have just isn't cutting it.
I actually have a question, speaking of battles. When it comes to medical care in this country, I'm a part of a couple of communities that have, shall we say, fraught relationships with the medical community in terms of accessing care. And, you know, I do a lot of work with the GLP-1 community and I'm really passionate about getting equitable access to care and medication for people of color and the queer community as well. And I would love if you had any maybe statistics you could share about how the medical community has been focusing on or could be focusing more on providing more and better access for us.
I'm not great with numbers, but we do know that the Black communities are actually at almost a double increased risk of developing diabetes when you have obesity compared to Caucasian populations. And when you look at this across the board, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, depression, or anything else, it's consistently higher, double that risk or even more. And what our medical community is doing about it is limited, I think, to the different institutions and to people like yourself, Jay, who are motivated and an intrinsic community leader already to make all of those happen. I know from the medical side of things, there's a lot of push to have doctors who look like you, right? People who can actually relate and that you are more comfortable working with. That's part of that diversity, equity, and inclusion movement. We've been dealing with a systemic racism for years, decades, centuries, and it's nigh time that we have a anti-systemic or systemic anti-racism, right, in place. And so I know a lot of institutions are incorporating professionals who whose job is explicitly to push that forward. And then also from the research side of things, most of the people in clinical trials tend to be Caucasian males. And that is not the population we're serving, right? That's not the population at risk. It's women, it's non-Caucasian, Blacks and Hispanics. And so there's a large intentional push as well to have a more diverse recruitment for research so that we can understand, are these therapies safe and effective for the people who are actually using it, actually needing it.
That's great.
That comforts me to hear that. It really does.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to the next question. That sounds like it's very abrupt here, but did you want to say anything else, Jay, or?
No. I'm just appreciative to hear that there are efforts and to feel seen, because a lot of the conversation when we do talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in this moment comes from a negative light and doesn't address the fact that it has an important role to play in the way that people access care. And it's more than just employment. It's more than just, getting access to educational institutions. It's about being able to live, and just hearing you address that, it means a lot. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm happy to expound on anything if you guys want. I don't know if you want this to be more conversational, or if you have your list of questions and you really want to get answers to all of the questions.
No, we love.
I want to be mindful of time too. So
I wanted to, and I know we
talk forever about any of these things.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm happy to too. I want to respect your time because I know, we had a little bit bumpy to start. Cause we always try to do a little early because there's always technical difficulties. So if you have the space to be able to have things more conversational, we would love that. Yeah. But yeah, the questions are definitely meant for us to talk about. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause we like to nerd.
We do. We're GLP nerds.
I'll make this one really quick. We're all of a certain age, us women. Jay is pregnant over there, so we asked Jay if he was glowing pregnant. But anyway, so we're at a certain age where we're reaching perimenopause or menopause. Maybe I just have selfish reasons. I've always wondered if a GLP-1 therapy can actually help women experiencing the change. Or is that in a clinical trial right now? Are we studying that?
Gosh, menopause is one of those things that I think half of the population lives through, right? But we have so little information about it. It's kind of crazy. No one really takes it that seriously, but so we all go through it anyway. When it comes to the GLP-1s, there is no explicit trial looking just at women in menopause. But I can tell you that when they do the recruitment, a lot of it is Caucasian women around age 51. Okay. So the medications have been specifically by chance, have been specifically examined in people who are probably perimenopausal. And so we do find that it's very effective. Now, whether it's effective because it affects the specific hormones that are changing during menopause, it's hard to say. Even just the relationship between menopause and weight gain or weight changes themselves is a little bit tricky to figure out. When you look at all of the evidence, we actually find that weight doesn't change that much, but your body composition changes. Like you have more fat mass, less muscle mass. And so because muscle weighs more than fat, the weight itself doesn't change, but the body composition changes. And then the distribution of that also changes. We kind of go from that pear-shaped more to an apple shape around perimenopause and through menopause. And when we have, again, that accumulation of fat and weight around your truncal area, that's where you have an increased risk of other metabolic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, etc. So that's the relationship when we look at menopause and weight. And the GLP-1s, they don't affect estrogen that we know of. Okay, but they don't affect estrogen themselves, but it does change appetite centers, you know, what our relationship to food is, cravings, all of that. And so those two may be having this interplay such that it's working particularly well for women going through menopause.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating. I know, and this is just self-diagnosis. I did a Dr. Google, or no, I really didn't do a Dr. Google. It was me. I used to have really awful, terrible, sorry, Jay, times of the month. Just
are you sorry?
Insanely painful periods.
You understand?
Well, because it's girly talk, right? But since taking Mounjaro or tirzepatide, they're not as bad. So it's
amazing.
I deduced it to that, but I should probably just go see an endocrinologist. And
probably, I don't mind Dr. Google. I actually like that people are doing their own research and coming, just as long as you come back to us, come back to the doctor and ask, confirm this. Can you bust this myth? What's actually true out there of what I found? That's actually really helpful for us to open the conversations. And I think, Kat, that you're not alone in that experience with GLP-1s. We've heard from a lot of women that their periods have improved. If they had a disease of endometriosis, that seems to have gotten better. If they had PCOS with irregular periods, now they're regular again. So there's still a lot that we don't know about GLP-1s. We do know that fat tissue produces estrogen in of itself. And when you lose weight, you're losing some of that fat. And so maybe it's just a different level of estrogen that's being balanced in your body.
Interesting.
Now.
Yeah.
You've mentioned...
go ahead.
Now, I was just curious because you've mentioned this a few times already about specific studies and different populations that are being studied and different illnesses. And you said, we aren't studying GLP-1s for this yet. Along with menopause being specifically studied, like what's on your wish list, I guess, of what we should study?
Good question.
PCOS.
Oh, that's a good nerd question. Yes.
Actually, yes, like fertility. I think fertility is such a big one. We're seeing trends. You must have heard this of women getting pregnant on GLP-1.
I have many, many friends.
We have so many of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So many baby zepbounds are coming.
Yeah. Baby zepbounds, baby MJs, baby Ozempics and Wegovy's. Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's such,
and they're
really,
well, they're 40s. They're women in their 40s that had PCOS. Yeah. Like
they tried for years.
A 100% joyful moment, right? And as a doctor, I was like, congratulations. But then there's like a little voice in the back of your head of like, what did that zepbound do something? Is it going to do something to the pregnancy? Is it going to do something to fetus? Yeah. We just don't know. And the guidance from the manufacturer is that you should be off of the medication for 2 months before you get pregnant. So that's the same messaging that we're giving to everyone. And many of them are in perimenopause, right? And they're like, I'm not going to get pregnant. I'm 40 something, or I'm 45.
Wait a minute. Is there no, please. I'm sorry. I just made me, there's still a chance because, okay. Oh God, no, I'm 47. Oh God, no. Oh my God, no.
Boots.
Okay.
So I think that, personally, I think women's health has not received enough of a spotlight in general. And I think in particular, this peri-pregnancy time period of like what's causing infertility in men and women. What should we be doing to boost that fertility? How do we get pregnant safely? How do we support a safe pregnancy and all of that? I think that is not studied enough. A lot of it has to do with how do we do that carefully and ethically, right? You don't want to test medications on an unborn fetus.
Right.
And so it's a challenging space, but I feel that there's so many people having that experience already. We should at the very least be collecting their stories and putting it together, and kind of maybe watching them through their pregnancies and through the early childhood, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, all of this stuff is risk versus reward, right? Like, I don't know how much you know about me and my story. I struggled with infertility. I had 2 miscarriages before my son. My son was a complete surprise, and I was obviously very traumatized with the pregnancy because of before. I had something called a partial molar pregnancy. Like, it's just like very, very traumatic experiences. And so it's hard for me to even enjoy my pregnancy, but I very much wanted more children. And I never got pregnant again. And I had my son in 2012. And so I think to myself, let's don't get crazy. I very much in 2012, you know, my son was born, and Victoza was out in 2012. And I thought to myself, when I had regained all my weight, because I had also had lap band surgery, and I had regained my weight, and I was like, why in the world, you know, didn't somebody say something? You know, like, hey, clearly you're struggling with your weight. Hey, I know you've had weight loss surgery. Clearly you've gained your weight back. Did you know about this GLP-1s? Like, but nobody said anything. And I think to myself, like, how many grandchildren could I possibly have in the future? And how many children could I have had, and all of these different things? Because I did want to be a mom, but I'm not going to lie. Like, I did not know that I was going to love being a mother as much as I love it. And now he's 11 and a half and thinks I'm way less cool. And, you know, so you become a different kind of mother as they grow. And I think that a lot of other mothers I see, and this is my perception, right, is that they have these children, and they, you know, there's years between them, right? So it's like you have more time. And I'm very sad of that. You know, I'm very sad about it. I wish I was, but I'm mad, and I'm mad too, because this was available, and somebody could have said something, but they didn't. They just told me to go lose weight. They just told me to figure it out, or they just quit talking about weight completely because it was uncomfortable, because clearly I had regained, right? And but nobody did. And I want other women out there who hear this podcast, this episode, and all the other ones we do too. We talk about PCOS and fertility, all things. I want them to get things checked and to ask these questions and to challenge their providers, especially even PCPs, because that could affect their family plans. And I do think everything happens for a reason. Like I really do. Like I would I have had the space and the capacity to create this podcast if I had more children? Probably not. You know, but I think that, you know, I just want other people to have the shot, you know, and I believe it or not, so many people are tired of struggling with you know, infertility, and it's so painful. It's so painful mentally and physically, and the things it does to your body, that I feel like they would probably be in that study. If it meant that they could have a baby at the end of it, they would probably take that risk. That's the thing, is people with obesity, we've struggled a long time. And I think a lot of us are willing to take those jumps. We're willing to take that risk because truthfully, we don't know, right? Like someone made a video about that in our community the other day and said, truthfully, we do have a lot of data, right, on these meds. We do. We know how they treat obesity. We know how they treat type 2 diabetes. But do we know what it's like for maintenance with them? Not really, right? We really don't have tons of data on that, but we're all jumping in, right? And it's because we're sick of being sick. We're sick, you know, we're sick of it, and we just want to get better. And so if it means that we have 10 years or whatever it is, right, of being as healthy as we possibly can be, then most of us are like, bring it on. Right. So I feel like I also feel like there's a certain grit in people that have dealt with obesity, but also who deal with PCOS, right? Insulin resistance. Yeah. Like I think, and I hope that Eli Lilly, if you're listening, I know you know about me, then I hope that you do that study.
Actually, I will correct myself that I do think that they are, both Lilly and Novo, they have a pregnancy registry, so that if you do get pregnant and if you feel comfortable reporting it to them, letting them know, so that they can kind of pull you in, collect some information, follow you. Most, large pharmaceutical companies will do this because this is the only way that they can capture that data.
That's amazing.
This is the first that I've heard of that. We need to make sure.
You got to
Yeah,
we'll make that a short and put it on TikTok.
Yeah, we got to make sure people know that.
Yes, spread the word. That's what we do.
For sure.
Sorry. I feel like I hijacked a little bit. Kat, you had another question. Go ahead.
I have this question because it is like a burning question of mine. Because we're big nerds and we read all of the directions and all the boxes. And I wouldn't say it's a debate, but it's been posted on a lot of our TikToks and on IG is Eli Lilly advises that you avoid niacin while taking these drugs. My question is, how much is too much? I know my husband had to take niacin to reduce his blood pressure, for example, right? So you have to take a whole supplement. But we found that there is niacin naturally occurring in a lot of our foods. Specifically, there's niacin in our protein powders. And some of us have stopped consuming certain protein powders because of it. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat. The debate. How much niacin is too much niacin?
I'll be very honest.
She knows I don't treat my guests badly. It's okay.
No.
You're not. You're not. Okay, we're not the hot seat. Hot seat. You're right. We have to ask a lot of doctors.
I'm happy to be in the hot seat. I will be very honest that I am not aware of an interaction between niacin and tirzepatide. So when I think, can I say that you sneaked me the questions beforehand and I took a peek? But when I looked at it, I quickly did my own research to see what was there any sort of niacin mentioned in the package insert, all the readings and all of that, and I didn't see anything.
Food has definitely been a very dominant voice in my head. That's not the main focus anymore. Dieting, exercising, and adding GLP-1s through Ro is a game changer. I have such a sense of mental freedom since I started with Ro. Food no longer controls my thoughts. Family time used to revolve around food, and now it revolves around what we're gonna go do together.
Given that caution when you were giving Mounjaro or with the compounded tirzepatide?
Good question. I was not given that caution
at all. Okay.
Sabrina, you could speak to that as well, right? Wasn't it posted on?
Yep.
It was right?
Yeah, it was just someone in our community who looked it up, like drugs.com. And then because they were paying out of pocket for tirzepatide. So everything that they were receiving, like taking in supplement wise, they were checking on drugs.com and niacin was one of the things. And that was the interaction came back as a moderate interaction.
Oh, interesting. So the only thing that I could presume as a potential interaction has to do with that low blood pressure or like taking it for blood pressure. GLP-1s can open up your blood vessels. They call it vasodilation. So opening up your blood vessels means that reduces your blood pressure. So that can be helpful. It's been shown to open up the blood vessels in the heart, actually. And we think that that's one of the mechanisms by which it has been shown to protect us against heart attacks and strokes and all of these things. Opening up your blood vessels is also what niacin does, because niacin does that to lower blood pressure. Some people get like flushing as a side effect, heat rashes, flushing, maybe itchiness. So I presume that the potential interaction could be those two, where if you do both at the same time, your blood vessels might open up too much and maybe you might get lightheaded or flushing or lower blood pressure. And I can see that may be something to watch out for. Practically speaking, if you're doing protein powders, taking your niacin medication and taking the GLP-1 and you haven't had any of those side effects, I think you should be fine. But I'll put in the usual caveat here that you should talk to his doctor. Absolutely. And whatever I say does not constitute medical advice.
Yeah. And that was just something I was very nerded, but I wanted to nerd out on because I'm I was like,
If
how?
we're nerding out about packaging materials and the labeling and medications, what? So in our community, there's one part of the packaging that everyone reads. Apparently, they read the potential side effects, and that's it. When people read potential side effects, how should they approach potential side effects when they read a long list?
If you're a suggestible person, then I wouldn't read that out at all.
Anybody that watches an influencer on TikTok should not read that, because we're all influenced.
You're going to how there's constipation and diarrhea, and then somehow you're going to manifest both. And so I would caution you to not do that. I mean, number one, when your doctor prescribes these medications, he or she should already be giving you some general idea of the most common side effects. And it should be sufficient enough to go ahead, go with that shot, just knowing what your doctor told you. That being said, we are very busy people, and oftentimes we don't go through everything. Many times you might just be handed a piece of paper, and that's all you get. And the really intrepid among us will read all of the fine print in the package insert. I think that's so great. I think that's so great. Just recognize that every individual experience is different. Right. I think you guys know this intrinsically, that what happens to one person may not happen to another. Weight loss may happen for you. It may not happen for someone else, all of these things. And so when the manufacturer puts those side effects in, it's everyone who's ever had any one of those side effects gets listed into there. Right. And it's not even just related to the GLP-1, to the actual drug you're taking. Some of those has the language of prior weight loss medications have been associated with XYZ. And so the government, the FDA, requires that to also be in this package insert, even if it hasn't even been seen with the GLP-1s. Like,
I didn't know that.
One big example is suicide risk. Okay. I want to be very mindful of this for you, Jay, because we recognize how these medications are life-changing for people. And that's both physically, mentally, socially, functionally, like across the board. And in the clinical trials, they didn't see any changes with regard to mental health, right? No increased risk of depression or anxiety, any of that. But if you really look at that package insert, there's going to be some fine line there, or some fine print there, about suicide risk. And that is only there because of older medications that may have been associated with that. And those medications obviously are not around anymore, but we still carry that chip on our shoulder. So we still have that in the package insert. And I have to say that, since this flag has been raised about mental health, both in Europe and the US, there's been further investigations into GLP-1s and that risk, and they've seen zero risk of that with these meds.
I know that for me, once I started taking a GLP-1, I used to have anxiety. And once I started taking a GLP-1, that it's completely gone. I mean, I don't have it at all, like even in the slightest bit.
It's
so
crazy. I'm with Brina on this, and I swear to God. So recently I started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I swear to God, it's been blood sugar all this time. I think I thought it was anxiety, and it was blood sugar.
Really?
It could be. Sugar is a mind-altering substance now. So
it just, like, with the fluctuations that I've seen with that's on a medicine. That's on medicine. Like, what was it before? Like, it's blown my mind, the insights of the CGM. Like, it's not to divert, but I'm telling you, I tell people, it's one of the biggest reasons I've been, like, such a big advocate and evangelist with this, is that I used it. You would never know because I was very good at hiding it, but I suffered from crippling anxiety. And the older I get and the bigger I got, the worse it got. Right. And that's what we talk about. I think the hormonal shift and everything. And then when I got to a certain dose of it, it turned off like a switch, just like the food noise. So many things turned off just that fast, blew my mind.
Yeah, crazy. It was almost like a light switch.
Yeah, but Dr. Rentia, so Dr. Rentia's obesity specialist, she's like blood sugar nerd, she says, but she did say a lot of times, I mean, I used to take anxiety pills at night because I wouldn't be able to sleep because my mind would be like racing and all the things. And now that I wear the CGM, my blood sugar goes crazy at night. I have, it does. And I just, stuff like that. I'm like, is that what was happening? And I think it just goes back to a lot of the times we say someone has anxiety, right? And we treat the anxiety and we never consider maybe there's an underlying cause, right? And I mean, I think even going back to Jay, like I struggled with what Jay was talking about too, with mental health. I was diagnosed, I was assaulted in college. I'm very open about it on the show. I was assaulted in college and it was a very traumatic experience for me, obviously. I was immediately given the diagnosis of bipolar. Immediately. Like I met the man one time, bipolar, and bam, he had me on Depakote. And guess what happened? Because I have obesity and because of Depakote, gained 100 pounds like that. Couldn't get it off, And I just think that that's a lot of times we don't think about, and we didn't know really then, right? That was a long time ago. I'm an old lady, but we didn't really know then. I think but we shouldn't be just like giving these diagnoses that are really big with just meeting someone one time. Like there should be some, hey, let's make sure there's not something biological going on. Hey, maybe this does have something to do with the horribly traumatic experience that you just went through, And I hope people will look at that, I hope that if someone comes into their office and says, I'm struggling with anxiety and depression, that they go, let's talk about what's going on and let's do some friggin' blood work, something, especially if it's evident they suffer from obesity. Like it's a discussion that should be had. And like, if the doctors aren't willing to have it, because for God's sakes, we've learned that a lot of the GPs just aren't, I would tell you, if you are listening to this and you do not take one of these medicines yet, have the discussion, have it. Because truthfully, I have gone down to the smallest dose possible for the bipolar medicine. And I feel the same. Like I really think I was just misdiagnosed for a really, really long time, and I think that's important just anyway. Sorry, rant. Hallelujah.
I actually had a dosage decrease since being on Mounjaro. So
you had a decrease?
Yeah.
A decrease, okay? Decrease.
Yeah.
I think all of your stories are getting at the crux of this of like, what is obesity exactly?
Yeah,
right? True. It's a medical disease. It's a diagnosis. The way we've defined it by this body mass index, BMI, for weight,
straight
I think was right. It was that was done when we just didn't know better, right? I mean, number one, it was done through insurance companies, MetLife. It was done through a researcher who established that BMI scale using only Caucasian men and some people from Africa, a few fishermen from Japan, and then we've said that, oh, it's good enough for women too, and everyone else in the world, and we're just going to use that. So there's a lot of problems with the BMI, of course. But over 30 years of research, we also now realize that obesity actually isn't just the weight issue, and it may not even be weight at all, right? We're trying to get closer to what is it exactly? Is it fat mass as opposed to muscle mass and bone? Because we're composed of a lot of things. Or is it this like abnormal energy regulation? And if you really want to get nerdy here, this is where my cross is, where I think obesity has to do with that hormone control and how our brain just doesn't recognize what our energy status is, whether we're fed or fasted, okay? Whether we're under our weight set point or above our weight set point. Our brain doesn't recognize that. And so when you think of it from that perspective, Kim, when you're sleeping at night and your blood sugars are going nuts, your body is probably thinking, am I starving? When is my next meal? I'm hungry. Wait, I'm not hungry. Do I need energy? Do I not need energy? I'm trying to increase my blood sugar, but then it's dropping again. You know, like the organs in your body just don't know what your energy status is. And to your body, that would make me anxious too, of like not knowing when my next actual sustenance is going to be coming in.
And there's no food noise to make me eat. Right?
Exactly. And so all of that is connected, right? If you think about it from a very kind of animal Paleolithic type of brain, when your body just doesn't know whether you're hungry or full, whether you have energy stored or you don't, you're skinny or not, or whatever it is, then yeah, that's going to create so many downstream consequences. And, you know, maybe weird food relationships where you're always trying to eat a little bit extra because your brain doesn't know when the next meal is. Or having this new kind of comforting relationship or codependent relationship with food, because yeah, that is what you need to survive. And your brain wants you to be super connected to that. And now that you have this medication that breaks all of that, that makes your body realize again where your food, where your energy status is, all of those downstream consequences fix themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also been, you know, and I talk a lot about the CGM. I'm super curious to hear what you think about that. But it's really helped me eat differently. And guess what? Now that I eat differently, like when I eat and what I eat, like with the care of the doctor, right? I started losing weight again because I started eating according to what my body was doing instead of like fasting because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, or eating 1,000 calories a day because that's what I'm supposed to do. I started literally seeing how my body was processing things. I eat a complex carb at night. Listen, complex carb when you come from diet culture, no. Okay. I eat one before I go to bed, which stabilizes my blood sugar all night. If I don't, then I have severe drops. And
that's precision nutrition. That's the field of precision nutrition. That all these diets you hear that's working for one person and not another, and everyone comes out with a new fad diet. The reason why there's so many new ones is because different things work for different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You like said the phrase precision nutrition, and my ears are perked because that's new to me. And
what is that all about? Yeah. Yes. So I think that the continuous glucose monitor is one step in that. There's studies showing that, you know, so the continuous glucose monitor basics is a device you wear either on your belly or your arm. It has this tiny catheter, like this tube that sits right underneath your skin, and it's inserted there with a needle that just injects it and then pulls out, and it just sits there. And what it does is that it's measuring the blood sugar that's been translated into the surface of your skin. So it's not perfect, right? It's not actually in your blood vessel, but it's good enough to see trends. And so what I think Kim is talking about is, you know, what kind of foods you're eating, how you're eating them, like how they're cooked, when you're eating them during the day, or even like in relation to other foods you just ate, or when you woke up, or what sort of physical activity, like all of that matters, and how that's affecting the sugar, okay, the glucose that device is reading out. And there are studies showing that for some people, it's better that they eat a cookie than a banana, because that cookie won't spike their blood sugar, but a banana will. And then vice versa for another person. And you would never know that unless you had a continuous glucose monitor. Whereas if you just talk to people, if you just talk to a doctor, they might say, oh, the fruit is probably better than a cookie. You know, a nutritionist will say fruit is always going to be better than a cookie, so go for the banana. But actually, for some people, that cookie might actually be better.
Yeah, the banana is a really good one for me, actually. And again, like diet culture tells me, don't eat that banana. There's nothing good with the banana. It's a filler. It's a carb. Like, you know, No, it actually makes my body not panic. And then I can sleep and not have hypoglycemic events that I sleep through that could
so interesting.
unalive me. Or, oh, sorry, I'm on TikTok. You know, like, I mean, those are really dangerous things. And I think a lot of people don't even know, but I sleep through them. Why do I sleep through them? I sleep through them because I was taking anxiety medicine to knock me out at night.
More drugs.
So that's like
never known. Fascinating, right?
So precision nutrition is an early field. So it's important to get on it, but take everything with a grain of salt. Make sure you're talking to an expert about how to interpret all the data that's coming in as well.
Absolutely, yes.
So it sounds like we're all like thumbprints, like our nutritional, like our reaction. We're so different.
We're totally guinea pigs.
There's no one size fits all approach to anything. That is so interesting what you're going through, Kim. That's fascinating.
I mean, it's wonderful to have like the trending data. Like, I think a lot of times when you go so many years with, like you said, like I'm doing all of the quote unquote right things and like it's not happening for me, right? Or I do and then I regain, right? And all of those different things. Like there's just so much, not enough like data and definitions and, you know, and people look at you like you're just fat and lazy. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm not, I'm a boss. I'm telling you, like, there's no lazy in me, you know? I honestly don't think anybody I know that has obesity is lazy. I think that's not even true at all, you know? But it's a common misconception, you know? And I love that. I totally agree. Like if you get, and that's something that I think is really important. If you decide to get the continuous glucose monitor, you don't know what's happening. You need a medical professional to interpret it. So even if you decide to get one over the counter, which is coming out, I think it's wonderful. But be involved in some sort of program or working closely like with your clinician, like I do, right? To understand what to do and what to eat and what to try to find what works for you. And I wasn't doing it to try to lose weight, right? I had already lost 100 pounds, but I had hit like some pretty big, long stalls, really long ones. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's just my obesity. And, you know, and this has just been such incredible insight. It's answers, right? It's data points. It's something to work off of to then tweak and see what works for your body. Like it's actual data. It's real, you know? And, you know, like, and I think that like, it's important for people to know a lot of things, right? Like if you have really low lows, you probably want to use a finger prick and see how different it is, you know, things like that. Cause I do have very low lows, like 40s. And so this has really helped me eat better so that I don't have them anymore and I can control them, you know, as my medicine wears off, I get more and more, but like everybody's body is so different. And it does seem like, you know, insulin resistance kind of just almost displays a little bit different in different people, you know? And it's very fascinating. I just think that, I think, like you said, it's very new. And I think, and probably, you know, there's not a lot of experts, right? Because of that. But, you know, if it works, if you try it and it works and you're changing your food and you're seeing progress in your health and your numbers, then I think it's really good to have the insight, you know? I really do. So that's me. Sabrina, you had a question that you wanted to
I do. It's retatrutide, which I absolutely am obsessed with. The triple G in clinical trials. Could you help describe what the medication does and also talk about the trials and that it's increased the heart rate in some individuals? Should that be a concern for all?
You are on the frontiers of obesity medicine. I'm very impressed. Retatrutide.
We impressed a doctor. I'm just kidding.
I think it's wonderful that people are so on top of what's coming out because it's really what we're excited about too. Retatrutide, triple G, quote unquote. That G is GLP-1, GIP, which is the other component in tirzepatide or Mounjaro, zepbound. And then a third G is glucagon. So glucagon is a different hormone that's produced by your pancreas. And it's actually playing a really important role in blood sugar management. That's where we historically know it for. Like when Kim gets a low blood sugar of 40, your glucagon is freaking out and increasing so that your body makes its own blood sugar to bring that blood sugar back up. That freak out is my scientific term for activation of your sympathetic nervous system. So when you look at your nervous system, there's parasympathetic and sympathetic. When you're going to bed, it's your parasympathetic just sort of relaxing you. Everything's kind of turning off. Sympathetic is when you are going out for a bike ride, or you're going to spin class and you're turning on all of those adrenaline hormones. That's your sympathetic. So when glucagon increases, part of that is that sympathetic activation, where you could get a little bit of a heart rate increase, but you also could get essentially fat burn. So when you have that sympathetic activation, you're also increasing fat metabolism, burning that. And so we do think that glucagon and this triple G has a way to increase your energy metabolism, energy burn, energy expenditure. So that's the last part that we're kind of missing, because all of our other anti-obesity medications right now really work on the appetite and craving, like food side of things, like our relationship to food. But there's nothing out there that increases metabolism. This might. It's going to be very, very hard to prove, but we think maybe that's one of its mechanisms, that it's helping to burn more fat too, and it may very well be through that glucagon piece. Now, should people be concerned? I don't know. We don't know yet. We should wait for the trials to come out.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone is different. So
there are a lot of
react
people
to it,
out there that are getting, or what they think they're getting.
I hear about this.
Retatrutide.
I hear about this.
That's the whole compound thing. Let's just go. Let's ask this.
Let's just go. Let's start talking, because here's the thing. Like, most of us are pro safe compound. I'm pretty sure all of us, actually, pretty sure we are pro safe compound, right? But we've really, in the podcast specifically and with the doctors, dug into. We had an episode, but it was their first season, and now we're in season 3, where we talked about compound. But in the beginning, there was a lot of, we don't know, right, around it. And so people were really nervous, but obviously because of the shortage, right, it's intense. But there are people out there that think that they are taking retatrutide and they are being sold retatrutide. I bet you it's semaglutide or it's tirzepatide, and they're just being told that. I bet you. That being said, who knows? Like, good Lord, these GLP streets crazy. So, but yeah, so if we could talk a little bit about that, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think the compounding pharmacy question is challenging because it's less regulated, right? To your point, it's just less regulated. Pro safe compounding, 100%. The question is, what's safe, and how do we really know
exactly what equals safe or safe?
We don't.
Safe-ish.
It's hard, right? Yeah, it's hard, and it gets back to your original point of just risk benefit, right? I would say that if you had no other option, which many people don't, right? Many people have done the lifestyle therapies and diet, nutrition. Maybe they've even tried other anti-obesity medications and they just weren't a good fit for them. Is their last resort compounding pharmacy versus not having obesity treatment at all? If I were in that scenario, I would go ahead and look for a safe compounding pharmacy and try my best to find that. The way I kind of see it is, if you took your kid to the beach, right? Are you going to put a fence around the ocean to make sure they don't go in because you want them to be 100% safe? Impossible. It's impossible. You're going to teach them how to swim, give them floaties, make sure they go out where there's a lifeguard, be out there with them. You're going to give them all of the tools to make this uncontrollable thing as safe as possible. And so that's how I look at compounding too. It's not something under my control. It's less regulated than FDA approved medications, but people are going to go for them anyway. And so I think it's important that there's guidance out there on what to look for, what to definitely stay away from, right? If you're going to a med spa where they can't even tell you where they're getting their medication from, that's a huge red flag. If you are asking the right questions of, is where you're sourcing the pharmaceutical ingredient on an FDA registered list, and show me the certificate of analysis, and you're asking all of these questions, then it gets a little bit better. They can still be lying, of course, but it gets a little bit better. I do hope that eventually it's going to improve, right? Eventually the supply shortages will improve. So some people will be able to access the medications. But unfortunately, because of insurance companies, I think compounding is probably going to be here to stay.
Yeah.
And I really wish that the government took a more active approach to helping people identify safe and vetted compounding pharmacies.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the language, the compounding pharmacies are intended to do exactly this, to provide a service that no other niche in medicine can fill.
Yeah.
So whether it's shortages or lack of coverage or flavoring your antibiotic for your child, like this is not something that mass producers will do. So we're looking at an area of need that also needs more oversight.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, we, a lot of us, a lot of the telehealths will say they use like 503A or 503B, and they talk about batch testing and stuff. But I would tell you, like, the average, person looking for these medications, I don't know what any of that means, And I think that a lot of people will go and they'll go to use peptide companies because it's like dirt cheap, and we have no idea what that is.
The best thing I can say is, I think people are going to try whatever they do, but if you have a side effect or if you have a reaction that just seems out of the norm, then please report it. Please report it to the FDA, because they are not going to come and investigate unless there's something wrong. There's no preventative investigation. There is a reactionary investigation. So, and we need as many people kind of being open and honest with what they're experiencing so that we could all be safer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. Everybody remember that. Kat, you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's important, and I don't think enough people know to like take that step, and I think people are also probably worried about there's repercussions for themselves for doing that. The only thing I would ask about the compound piece is that what we sort of heard is that, like, I think Eli Lilly themselves sort of been like, listen, we're going to have shortages this whole year and probably well into 2026, right? They've been honest about it. Thank God somebody is. Because I'm really tired of this. We'll have it handled in a month crap from Novo. But at least they're being like, you know what, we fucked this up pretty bad. Okay, at least they're saying it, right? But I think that at the end of the day, there are still some people, because of insurance, right, they can't access these medicines. And I am of the mind, if you watch any of my stuff, I'm kind of a loud mouth about it. These are not weight loss medications. I don't think these are weight loss medications. We have weight loss medications. These are medications to treat sick people, like obesity, chronic inflammatory disease, right? Like, but it affects every organ in the body. It leads to, early death. It leads to heart attacks. It leads to strokes. It leads to all of these things. These are people who are sick and they need medicine, And so I think that we need to remember that when it comes to like compounding, the reason people are choosing it is because they are sick people that need medicine, right? It's not these. Now, I do know there are people, we know there are celebrities. We know there are people who want to lose 10 pounds that like leverage compounding medications and stuff like that. But I have to tell you, I really do think, honestly, that we need to quit looking at people. I'm curious where you stand, and I'll cut it out if you don't want me to. But that we need to quit looking at people and deciding if they're worthy of care, because clearly these medications help with many health conditions, right? Still, many we're still learning from, right? We're still learning about with these studies and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's very easy to look at someone and go, there's no way they should require, any kind of guidance. And like, especially like when we come to like BMI. So when we had Dr. Lee on our episode, and she's like, I'm half Chinese and BMI is straight trash for my community. She's like, because it just doesn't take into account any of those things, So I really do think we need to quit looking at people and deciding if they should be on the medicine or not. And that is very, very common. Here's the thing. I'm guilty. When I first started taking these and I would see people that were giving themselves the injection that were thin. Well, here's the thing. First of all, they had lost the weight, right? They had lost the weight and they were on maintenance, and I just didn't understand. But even then, the more I sat with it and the more I started hearing stories of people like that were going through menopause, and there was just 20 pounds. And to them, being a small human, 20 pounds is a lot of weight. And that 20 pounds was affecting thyroid. That 20 pounds was affecting, arthritis in the knees and all these different things. And I just think that I still don't think they're weight loss medicine. So because those people were clearly struggling with some sort of dysfunction, right? Some sort of hormonal disorder, right? Which kind of goes back to what we're talking about with the menopause and stuff. What do you think when you see these things as an obesity specialist, an endocrinologist, of people that may look like they should not be leveraging these medications? I know it's a little controversial, and I'll cut it. I'll cut it if you don't want to say it.
Don't cut it. Okay. Everyone should mind their own business. That's just it. Yeah. You never know, right? Whether you're on treatment for a disease or not is a private conversation, private discussion between you and your provider and anyone else that you welcome into that conversation. Yeah. But the majority of us are not in that conversation. So even when we look at celebrities, etc., talking about being on the Ozempic shot, I don't know. Maybe they do have prediabetes. Maybe they do have diabetes. Maybe they have, to your point, we know that the GLP-1s are treating a lot of other disorders. We just don't have that data for that just yet. Yeah. Maybe they do have a body dysmorphic disorder, and the GLP-1 is helping, or maybe it's helping with an eating disorder. Maybe it's worsening an eating disorder. We don't know. Right? We just don't know. And so, bottom line, everyone should just mind their own business.
Yes, because it's about health.
That's about health.
But because people think it's a weight loss, that's why they're doing it, right? They've always been like this, like Phenermine, like anytime it was weight loss, but they continue to look at these like they're just appetite suppression, right? They don't understand all of the different things they affect in the body, the things they do to the heart, the things to do with, which is what we try to talk about on the podcast, right? Like the cardiologist we had on the podcast talked about, literally it helps you process salt better, which helps your blood pressure. Like, can you look at someone that's thin and just make an assumption that they have good blood pressure? No, mind your business.
Mind the business that pays you.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. This was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for coming and helping us learn.
Exciting.
And yes, it was really good stuff. And we're so thankful for you being a part of our movement. We really are.
Thank you for having me. And thank you to all of you for sharing your stories and being such a voice for all of that too.
Well, we're definitely trying. We used to listen in our community to the Eli and Lily earnings calls. I don't do it anymore. But one of the ones I listened to a couple quarters ago, the guy, the Q&A is the best. I should just log in for that. Because they're all the stuff before is we made tons of money,
Right.
But at the end, the Q&A is good, right? And someone said to him, like, how are you going to get on more formularies? And the guy said, it's going to take the voices of the people with obesity.
It is.
And that's what we're trying to do, because there's
help, Dr. Tchang.
There you go. All of us. All hands on deck.
All hands on deck. Exactly. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it so much. And Jay, thank you again for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. It will help people. I get a message every episode that says, that sounds like me. I'm going to go see my doctor. And that's what I want people to do, right? I want them to get help. Yes, so thank you so much for more than just the disease of obesity, friend, right? More than that. Many disorders. Yes. So it's important, and your voice matters. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will see you next week, and hasta la pasta.
Bye, everyone.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you. based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
Yes, that was you. Yep.
We will be discussing that, and we have questions coming up.